The river trail was quiet in the way early mornings always were. Soft light filtering through the trees, damp earth underfoot, the steady hush of water moving past stones. He had taken this path dozens of times before, always for the same reason, to clear his head before the day began. The puppy trotted beside him, leash loose, nose busy with invisible stories written into the ground. Then, without warning, the puppy stopped. Not just paused, but planted his paws hard into the dirt, body low, ears alert. The leash went taut. A soft whine escaped his throat, growing sharper as his gaze fixed on the riverbank. He barked once, then again, pulling forward with sudden urgency. "Hey, easy," he murmured, surprised by the strength in such a small body. He laughed nervously, glancing around, embarrassed even though no one was there. "It's just water, buddy." But the puppy wouldn't move. He trembled now, tugging again, circling back toward the same spot, nose darting, tail stiff with focus. Each step closer to the river made his heart beat faster, not from fear, but from something harder to name. Instinct, maybe. Or concern. He tried to guide the puppy away, but the resistance was absolute. The puppy sat, then lay down, refusing to budge, eyes locked on the slow-moving current as if it were calling to him. A chill crept up his arms. The river looked the same as always, calm, harmless, ordinary. Yet the puppy knew something he didn't. And moments later everything changed. Before we continue, remember to like, share and subscribe for more heart-touching dog stories. And tell me, where are you watching from? The morning began the way it always did. Quiet, unhurried, almost invisible in how ordinary it felt. The river trail was still half asleep, wrapped in pale blue light that filtered gently through the trees. Dew clung to the grass. The air smelled clean, wet earth, cold water, leaves just starting to warm under the rising sun. He walked slowly, hands tucked into the pockets of his jacket, breath steady. This was his time. Before emails. Before noise. Before the world asked him to be anything more than present. At his side, the puppy padded along with soft confidence. Too big for his paws. Too curious for his own good. His ears twitched constantly, catching sounds that meant nothing to human ears. A bird shifting in the brush, a distant splash, the whisper of something moving where it shouldn't. His tail swung in easy arcs, relaxed, content. The leash hung loose between them. "Good pace today," he said quietly, more to himself than to the dog. The puppy glanced up, eyes bright, then lowered his nose again, inhaling deeply as if the ground itself had secrets worth studying. They had walked this trail dozens of times, sometimes after work, sometimes on weekends, always together. It was safe, familiar, predictable. That was part of why he liked it. The river curved alongside the path, wide and calm, its surface broken only by slow ripples and the occasional flash of sunlight. Smooth stones lined the bank, worn down by years of patient water. Nothing about it felt threatening. Nothing at all. They reached the bend where the trail narrowed slightly, the same spot where he usually paused to stretch, to sip water, to let the puppy sniff freely for a moment longer. But this time the puppy didn't keep walking. He stopped. Not abruptly. Not startled. Just stopped. The leash tightened. He felt it before he really noticed it, that subtle resistance, like a question being asked through tension alone. "Hey," he murmured, glancing down. "What is it?" The puppy stood still, body angled toward the river. His ears lifted. His tail slowed. His nose hovered inches above the ground, trembling as he drew in shallow, rapid breaths. Then came the sound. A low whine. Soft. Uncertain. But unmistakably focused. He followed the puppy's gaze toward the water. Nothing had changed. The river flowed the same way it always did. Calm. Steady. Almost soothing. Sunlight shimmered across its surface, making it look harmless, beautiful. Even. "It's okay," he said gently, giving the leash a small, encouraging tug. "Come on." The puppy didn't move. Instead he leaned forward. Pulled once, not hard but deliberate. The leash went taut again. That caught his attention. "Easy, buddy," he said, half smiling. "You've seen the river before." The puppy barked. Just once. Sharp. Sudden. The sound echoed strangely against the trees, then disappeared into the quiet. His smile faded. The puppy's body had changed. His posture lowered. His paws spread slightly, grounding him. His eyes stayed locked on one spot along the bank, not the water itself but just beyond it, where stones met mud and reeds bent toward the current. Another whine escaped him, this one higher, more urgent. He felt a flicker of something, a small irrational unease stir in his chest. "Hey, what's going on?" he whispered. He crouched slightly, following the line of the puppy's stare. Still nothing. No movement. No sound. No sign that anything was wrong. A breeze passed through, rustling leaves overhead. The river continued its steady murmur, patient and unconcerned. He straightened, exhaling softly. Probably curiosity. Puppies did this all the time. Reacting to smells, shadows, things humans couldn't detect. He knew that. He'd read enough. Heard enough stories. Still, he tried again to guide the puppy forward. This time the puppy resisted completely. He sat down. Then slowly, deliberately, he lay flat on the path, front leg stretched forward, leash pulling across his chest. Refusal. Clear. Absolute. "Seriously," he muttered under his breath, glancing around with a nervous chuckle. "You're stopping traffic, if there were any." There wasn't a soul in sight. Just him. The puppy. The river. The puppy's breathing had quickened. His sides rose and fell faster now, nose twitching, eyes unblinking. His tail had gone still. That did it. Something about that stillness settled heavily in his stomach. Dogs wagged when they were excited, when they were happy, when they were unsure but curious. This wasn't that. This was focus. This was intent. He knelt beside the puppy, lowering his voice without realizing it. "Hey," he said softly. "Talk to me." The puppy turned his head just enough to look at him, eyes wide, pleading, then snapped his attention back to the riverbank. Another tug. Harder this time. The leash bit into his hand. A chill crept up his arm, slow and unwelcome. He swallowed. The river still looked the same. Calm. Ordinary. Almost inviting. But the puppy knew something he didn't. And moments later, everything changed. He stayed kneeling there longer than he meant to. The cool dirt pressed through his jeans. The leash rested tight in his palm. The puppy didn't relax. If anything, he grew more alert. His ears pivoted in small, precise movements, tracking sounds that never quite reached human awareness. His nose lifted from the ground now, pointed toward the river, nostrils flaring as he tested the air. Again. And again. "All right," he said quietly, forcing calm into his voice. "I see you. I'm looking." He stood slowly, not wanting to startle him. The puppy rose too, instantly, as if waiting for permission that never came. The moment the leash loosened even slightly, he stepped forward, pulling toward the bank with renewed urgency. Not playfully. Not excited. Purposeful. "Easy," he murmured, tightening his grip. "Not in the water." The puppy didn't fight him. Instead, he shifted sideways, angling his body so he could keep moving closer without lunging. His tail stayed low, stiff, giving a single tight flick before going still again. That was new. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was communication. He followed a few cautious steps, eyes scanning the area the puppy seemed fixated on. The ground near the river was darker here, damp from overnight moisture. Small stones pressed into the mud, some half submerged, others resting just above the waterline. A smell reached him then. Faint. Metallic. Almost sweet in a way that didn't belong outdoors. He frowned. "Do you smell something?" he asked softly, as if the puppy might answer. The puppy whined again. Short. Sharp. His head dipped suddenly, nose nearly touching the ground as he inhaled deeply, then snapped back up toward the water. He barked once more. This time louder. It echoed across the river, startling a pair of birds into flight. His heart jumped. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, I hear you." He crouched again, closer to the riverbank now, careful where he placed his hands. The stones were slick beneath his fingers, cold from the night air. The puppy pressed forward until the leash stopped him. He didn't strain against it. He just stood there trembling. That trembling settled something heavy in his chest. Dogs shook when they were afraid. But this fear wasn't for himself. It was outward. Focused. Directed. "Hey!" he said gently, reaching down to touch the puppy's shoulder. It's all right. The puppy flinched at the contact, just slightly, then leaned into his hand as if grounding himself. His eyes never left the riverbank. The water moved lazily, carrying leaves, tiny twigs, pieces of the world that had let go upstream. Sunlight danced on its surface, too bright, too calm, too normal. He scanned the reeds. Nothing. He looked along the path behind them. Empty. A car passed faintly somewhere far off, the sound muted by distance and trees. Life continuing. The puppy let out a low sound then. Not a bark. Not a whine. Something deeper. A warning. It vibrated through his chest more than his throat, sending a subtle shiver up the leash and into his hand. His pulse picked up. Okay, he breathed. Okay. I'm listening. He stood again, eyes narrowing, letting his gaze slow. That was when he noticed it. Not movement. Absence. One patch along the bank looked wrong. The stones there were darker, damp in a way that didn't match the rest. A shallow indentation marred the mud, almost like something had been dragged or pressed into it. He leaned closer. The puppy surged forward again, pulling harder now, paws scrambling slightly against the dirt. Whoa, hey, he said, bracing himself. Careful. The puppy planted his feet, muscles tight, eyes fixed on the same spot. They were seeing the same thing now, and somehow that made it worse. The smell grew stronger as he edged closer. That faint metallic tang returned, sharper this time. His stomach tightened. This isn't nothing, he whispered. The puppy wagged his tail once. Not happily. Relieved. As if hearing the words mattered. He crouched again, heart beating in his ears, scanning the area more thoroughly. The reeds rustled softly in the breeze, brushing against one another with a sound that suddenly felt too loud. Every sense sharpened. The puppy's breathing synced with his own, fast, shallow. Something about that connection grounded him. They were in this together. He reached for a small stone near his foot, mostly without thinking. It was smooth and cool in his palm, lighter than it looked. He tossed it gently toward the riverbank. It landed near the darker patch with a dull thud. Nothing happened. No splash. No movement. The puppy barked sharply twice and pulled again, harder than before. No, he said instinctively, tightening the leash. Stay. The puppy didn't fight him. He just stared. Unblinking. Unyielding. That was when he realized something else. The puppy wasn't trying to get into the water. He was trying to get him to look closer. To see. A wave of unease rolled through him, slow and heavy. All right, he whispered. All right, show me. He stepped closer to the bank, careful, deliberate. The puppy stayed right at his side now, shoulder pressed to his leg, trembling still, but steady. Protective. Guiding. Whatever was there. The puppy had known before he did. And he wasn't going to let him turn away. He stopped himself just short of the river's edge. Not because the puppy pulled back, but because his own instincts finally caught up. The ground here felt unstable. Soft. Uncertain. He shifted his weight carefully, testing the mud with the toe of his shoe. It gave slightly, then held. The river murmured on, indifferent, its surface still smooth and unbroken. Nothing leapt out at him. Nothing screamed danger. And yet he hesitated. This is ridiculous, he said quietly, almost embarrassed by the tightness in his chest. You probably just smelled a fish or something. The puppy didn't respond. He stood rigid now, head low, ears angled forward. His eyes tracked every subtle change. Ripples in the water, reeds bending in the breeze, shadows sliding across stones. He trusted those eyes. But trusting didn't mean understanding. The human mind reached automatically for reason, for explanation, for comfort. He straightened, rolling his shoulders, forcing a slow breath. The smell, that faint metallic note, was still there, but it wasn't overwhelming. Could be rust. Old cans. Something washed downstream. The river collected things. That was what rivers did. Okay, he murmured, rubbing his face with one hand. Okay, we're not detectives. He gave the leash a gentle tug backward. Let's go, buddy. The puppy didn't move. Not an inch. Instead, he stepped sideways again, subtly blocking the path away from the river. His body angled outward, forming a barrier with surprising intent for such a small frame. That stopped him cold. He stared down at the puppy, disbelief flickering across his face. "You're blocking me?" he asked softly. The puppy glanced up at him briefly. Just once. Then turned back toward the riverbank. The message was clear. "Not yet." A laugh escaped him, short, uneasy. "Wow," he whispered. "You're serious." He crouched again, this time more conflicted than concerned. His thoughts tangled, pulling him in opposite directions. On one side, logic. There was no sound, no movement, no obvious sign of danger. On the other, the puppy, the trembling, the posture, the refusal to leave. Dogs didn't do this for no reason. Still he hesitated. "What if I'm wrong?" he murmured. "What if I overreact?" The idea pressed down on him, calling for help, making a scene, looking foolish over nothing. He imagined explaining it later. "My dog just had a feeling." It sounded thin even in his own head. The puppy whined softly. Not loud, not urgent, just disappointed. That sound landed harder than any bark. "I know," he said quietly. "I know." He reached down and rested his hand on the puppy's back. The fur was warm beneath his palm, vibrating faintly with tension. "You're saying something's wrong," he whispered. "I get that." The puppy leaned into the touch. Just slightly. As if grateful. The river breeze shifted, carrying the smell again. Stronger now, unmistakable. Metal. His stomach tightened. He scanned the bank once more, slower this time, forcing himself to truly look instead of glance. That darker patch of stone still stood out. The indentation in the mud looked deeper from this angle, longer. Like something had pressed into it with weight. Human weight. His throat went dry. "No," he breathed. "Don't do that." He shook his head, trying to clear the thought. Coincidence. Imagination. That's how panic started. He stood abruptly, decision forming in his mind, a compromise. "We'll walk a little farther," he said, firm but gentle. "Loop back later." "Okay." The puppy reacted instantly. He stepped forward again, planting himself directly in front of his legs. This time there was no subtlety. "No," the puppy seemed to say. His ears flattened slightly. His tail tucked just enough to show stress, not fear. Urgency. His breathing quickened. "Buddy," he whispered. The leash tightened between them, not from pulling, but from proximity. They were close now. Almost chest to knee. He felt foolish arguing with a dog. And yet here he was. A faint sound reached his ears then. So faint he almost dismissed it. A soft clink. Stone against stone. He froze. The puppy heard it too. His head snapped toward the sound, ears high, body tensing like a drawn bow. The sound came again. Irregular. Not rhythmic enough to be water. Too dull to be metal. Pebbles shifting. His pulse surged. He leaned closer to the bank, heart thudding now, his earlier doubts dissolving into something sharper. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. The puppy didn't look at him. Didn't need to. He knew. The sound stopped. Silence rushed back in, louder than before. Birds chirped cautiously, as if testing whether it was safe to resume normal life. The river kept flowing. Always flowing. He swallowed hard. Every instinct he had ignored minutes earlier now demanded attention. "I'm sorry," he said softly, not sure who he was apologizing to. "You were right." The puppy let out a quiet breath. Almost a sigh. The tension in his body didn't leave, but it shifted. From warning to readiness. Whatever was near that riverbank wasn't going to stay hidden much longer. And this time, he wasn't turning away. The silence after the sound felt heavier than noise. Too full. Too alert. He remained frozen, half crouched near the riverbank, heart hammering as if it were trying to warn him now too. The puppy stood rigid beside him, leash pulled tight not by force but by intention. The puppy shifted first. He stepped forward, then back. Forward again. A small circle repeated. Not frantic. Not random. Intentional. "Okay," he murmured, barely louder than the river. "Okay. I see you." The puppy whined again, higher this time, threading anxiety through the sound. His ears flattened, then rose sharply, scanning the reeds. His nose dipped, traced the air, then snapped back toward the same spot along the bank. Always the same place. Always the same insistence. He took a slow breath, steadying himself, and followed the puppy's movement. Each step closer made the ground softer beneath his shoes. Mud clung to the soles, sucking faintly as he shifted his weight. The puppy stopped suddenly. Blocked him. He turned sideways, body pressed against his shin, forcing him to halt. His tail tucked tighter now, stress visible, but his stance remained firm. Protective. Guiding. "You don't want me closer," he whispered. The puppy shook once, a quick release of tension, then nudged his leg with his nose, urging him to change direction instead of retreat. Not closer. Not away. Just different. He adjusted his position slightly, stepping to the side. The puppy relaxed by a fraction. A fraction was enough. His gaze followed the puppy's line of sight again, lower now, closer to the stones than the water itself. The mud here was darker, uneven, disturbed in a way that didn't match the natural flow of the river. Something had happened here. Recently. His throat tightened. The puppy pawed at the ground once, then twice, scraping lightly at the mud. He stopped immediately after, as if aware of a boundary he shouldn't cross. "I know," he whispered. "I know." He crouched again, hands braced on his knees, letting his eyes adjust to the details instead of the whole. The breeze shifted, bringing the smell back. Stronger now, unmistakable. Metal. And beneath it, something human. He swallowed hard. The puppy began to pace in short, tight steps, circling him, returning again and again to the same spot. Each pass grew faster. His breathing picked up, chest rising sharply, then settling. The repetition wore down the last of his doubt. This wasn't fear. This was urgency. "All right," he said finally, voice steady but low. "I'm listening." The puppy stopped pacing. He looked up at him, eyes wide and bright, then turned sharply toward the riverbank. Once. Decisive. That was it. Something inside him clicked into place. He leaned forward, reaching toward the stones slowly, stopping whenever the puppy tensed, moving only when the dog allowed it. They worked together without words. A strange, quiet partnership. He shifted one stone aside, then another. The puppy watched closely, muscles tight, tail still, every sense focused. A sound drifted up then. Soft. Unclear. Not quite a voice. Not quite the river. He froze again, breath caught halfway in. The puppy reacted instantly. He barked sharply twice, breaking the stillness, then pressed his body hard against his leg. Anchor. Alert. Protect. "Okay," he whispered, heart racing. Okay. The sound faded. Or maybe it hadn't been there at all. He didn't know anymore. But the puppy did something then that settled the question completely. He sat directly beside the disturbed patch of stones and stayed. No pulling. No pacing. No sound. Just presence. Waiting. The message was unmistakable. This is it. This place. This moment. His doubts dissolved completely, replaced by something steadier: responsibility. Whatever lay near that riverbank, it wasn't going to stay unseen. Not today. Not with the puppy refusing to let it. He reached out, fingers hovering just above the stones, breath shallow, heart pounding. Behind him, the trail remained empty. Ahead of him, the river flowed on, indifferent. Beside him, the puppy sat unmoving, eyes fixed, body tense, ready. The persistence had done its work. There was no turning back now. He moved carefully now. Each step was measured, deliberate, as if the ground itself might react. The puppy stayed glued to his side, shoulder brushing his leg, leash slack but ready. His trembling had eased into something else. A taut stillness, muscles engaged, eyes alert. Focused. The riverbank was closer than it looked. The air felt cooler here, damp and heavy, carrying that metallic scent more clearly now. It clung to the back of his throat. He crouched again, lowering himself until his knees pressed into the mud. "Easy," he murmured, though he wasn't sure who the words were for. The puppy leaned forward slightly, nose hovering inches above the stones. His ears flicked once. Then again. There. That spot. The same one he'd noticed earlier. The stones were different here, darker, slicker, clustered in a way that felt disturbed rather than settled. The mud between them was uneven, marked by shallow grooves and a long faint impression that ran toward the water. Dragged. His breath caught. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." He reached out, fingers hovering just above the stones. The puppy stiffened. Not a bark this time. Not a whine. Just a low, steady sound in his chest, a reminder. Slow. Careful. He adjusted his balance and touched one of the stones. Shifted easily. Too easily. The pebble beneath it was smooth and oval, pale against the darker mud. Ordinary at first glance. The kind of stone you'd skip across water without a second thought. But it didn't belong where it was. It sat wedged awkwardly into the groove, as if placed there or caught there by something moving fast. His fingers closed around it. The pebble was cold. Colder than the others. He lifted it gently. The mud beneath was darker still. Wet. Fresh. His heart began to race. "Hey," he breathed. The puppy's tail gave a single restrained wag. Not happiness. Recognition. As the pebble came free, the groove in the mud revealed more. Deeper now, clearer. The shape widened, curved slightly, then disappeared beneath the waterline. His stomach turned. He followed it with his eyes. The river lapped quietly at the edge, water slipping over the mud in thin sheets. For a moment, everything looked calm again. Too calm. Then he saw it. Just beneath the surface. A ripple that didn't match the current. A shadow, darker than the rest, pressed low against the bank. He leaned closer, heart pounding so loudly he was sure the puppy could hear it. The smell intensified. Metallic. Sharp. "No," he whispered. "No, no." The puppy let out a short, urgent bark and pulled once. Not toward the water but sideways, guiding his angle. That small adjustment changed everything. From this position, the shadow resolved into something unmistakable. Fabric. Dark. Soaked. Caught between stones. His breath left him in a rush. "Oh my God." The puppy whined softly, pawing at the ground, eyes locked on the same spot. His ears flattened now, stress finally breaking through his control. He didn't hesitate anymore. He stood abruptly, heart slamming against his ribs, and scanned the area with new clarity. "Help," he whispered, already reaching for his phone. "Someone needs help." His hand shook as he unlocked the screen. He knelt again, keeping his distance from the water but close enough to confirm what his mind was still struggling to accept. A sleeve. A human sleeve. Pinned by stones, tugged by the slow pull of the current. The pebble in his hand suddenly made sense. It wasn't just a stone. It was a marker. Something displaced. Something the puppy had noticed instantly, because dogs didn't see scenes the way humans did. They saw patterns. Disruptions. Things that didn't belong. He swallowed hard, forcing himself to breathe. "It's okay," he murmured to the puppy, voice trembling despite his effort to stay calm. "You did good. You did so good." The puppy leaned into his leg, pressing close, grounding him. He dialed emergency services, voice tight as he explained where he was, what he could see. His words came out clipped, careful. "There's someone in the river," he said. "Partially submerged. I don't know if they're conscious." He listened, nodded, answered questions automatically. "Yes, river trail, East Bend. Yes, near the old footbridge. No, not moving." He ended the call and sat back on his heels, chest heaving. The river murmured on. Unchanged. Unbothered. The puppy sat beside him now, posture alert but steadier, as if his job, the warning, had been fulfilled. Together they waited. Minutes stretched. Each second felt heavy. He watched the water, afraid to blink, afraid something might shift and disappear again. The puppy's eyes never left the spot. Not once. In the distance, faint but growing louder, came the sound of sirens. Relief washed through him in a slow, shaking wave. "You saved someone," he whispered, fingers curling into the puppy's fur. "You know that, right?" The puppy didn't respond. He just stayed there, watching, guarding, as if making sure the truth didn't sink back into the river unnoticed. The pebble rested in the mud beside them now, small, unremarkable. And yet, it had explained everything. The first siren cut through the trees like a sharp breath. Distant. Faint. But unmistakable. He felt it before he fully heard it. Relief loosening something tight in his chest that he hadn't realized was locked. His shoulders dropped slightly, just enough to let air back into his lungs. "They're coming," he whispered. The puppy didn't move. He stayed seated beside the riverbank, posture rigid, eyes still fixed on the water. His ears twitched once toward the sound of the siren, then returned forward. Duty first. He glanced back down the trail, heart pounding now for a different reason. The path curved away through the trees, empty for the moment, but the sound was growing. Closer. Faster. He turned back toward the river. The fabric was still there. Still caught. Still unmoving. "Hang on," he murmured, unsure who the words were meant for. "Just hang on." The puppy rose suddenly. Not in alarm. In readiness. He stepped closer to the edge than before. Paws planted carefully, weight shifted back, as if measuring how far was too far. His nose dipped toward the water, inhaling sharply, then lifted again. A short bark escaped him. Urgent. Calling. "No," he said quickly, tightening the leash. "Easy. Easy." The puppy didn't resist. He just held his ground, body angled between the water and the human, a living barrier. Protective. The sirens grew louder now, weaving through the trees with echoes that bounced and blurred direction. Somewhere farther down the trail, voices carried faintly. Human voices, raised, purposeful. Help was close. Still not close enough. He scanned the water again, panic threatening to surface. What if the current shifted? What if whatever was holding that sleeve loosened? He imagined it slipping free. Disappearing. Gone. The thought made his stomach twist. "Okay," he whispered, forcing calm. "Think." He eased himself a step closer to the bank, careful not to disturb the stones. The puppy stayed with him, shoulder brushing his leg, breath warm and fast against his calf. The water lapped quietly. The fabric moved slightly with the current. A subtle tug, barely noticeable unless you were watching closely. It was watching. That was the difference now. "I see you," he said softly. "I see you." He didn't reach in. He knew better. Rivers were deceptive. Calm on the surface. Powerful underneath. Instead, he did the only thing he could. He raised his voice. "Help!" he called out, voice breaking the stillness. Down by the river. The sound echoed off the trees, carried by the water. He waited. Nothing. Then footsteps. Fast. Uneven. A figure appeared around the bend of the trail. A jogger, slowing abruptly, eyes widening as he took in the scene. "There's someone in the water," he said quickly, pointing. "Emergency services are on the way." The jogger swore under his breath and pulled out his phone, stepping closer but stopping short when he saw the bank. "I'll flag them down," the man said. "They're coming from the other side." "Thank you," he breathed. The puppy barked once, sharp and clear, then settled again, eyes never leaving the river. Minutes stretched. The sirens grew louder still. Then came the voices. Clear now. Directed. "Over here," the jogger shouted. Movement flooded the trail. First responders emerging through the trees with practiced urgency. Bright jackets cut through the muted greens and browns of the morning. One of them raised a hand. "You called it in?" she asked. "Yes," he said, stepping back to give them space. "My dog noticed something. There by the stones." The responders moved quickly but carefully, eyes scanning, assessing. One of them knelt, leaning over the edge with a rope already in hand. The puppy tensed. He felt it immediately. "Hey," he whispered, crouching beside him. "It's okay. They've got it now." The puppy didn't relax. Not yet. The rope splashed into the water, cutting across the calm surface. Hands worked in coordinated motions, controlled, precise. "Got it," someone said. The fabric shifted. More of it surfaced. The puppy let out a low sound. Not fear, not excitement. Release. They worked quickly after that. Too quickly for his mind to fully follow. Commands. Movement. The scrape of boots against stone. And then, a body. Pulled free from the water, soaked and heavy, laid gently onto the bank. His breath caught painfully in his chest. Alive? He searched their faces for an answer. One of the responders checked for a pulse, fingers pressing firmly at the neck. Another leaned in, listening. Seconds stretched thin. Then, "I've got a pulse." The words landed like a lifeline. His knees went weak. He sat back hard onto the dirt, hands shaking as the adrenaline drained from his system. The puppy finally relaxed. His posture softened. His tail lowered. His ears eased back into a neutral position. Job done. He found them? One of the responders asked, glancing down at the puppy with new interest. He did, he said, voice thick. He wouldn't let me leave. The responder nodded slowly, respect clear in her expression. Good dog, she said quietly. The puppy glanced up at her, then back at him, as if to say, of course. They loaded the person onto a stretcher moments later, movements efficient, practiced. The sirens quieted, replaced by focused calm. As they prepared to move, he stood slowly, legs unsteady, puppy pressed close against him. One of the responders paused before leaving. You did the right thing, she said. Both of you. He nodded, unable to speak. The stretcher rolled away down the trail, disappearing into the trees. The river returned to its quiet murmur. The crisis had passed. He looked down at the puppy, fingers sinking into his fur. You stayed, he whispered. You didn't give up. The puppy leaned into him fully now, warm and solid, tail giving a gentle, tired wag. Whatever instinct had driven him, whatever had pulled him toward the river, it had saved a life, and neither of them would ever forget that. The trail felt different after they left the river. Not changed in any obvious way. The trees still stood where they always had. The air still smelled of damp earth and leaves. But something inside him had shifted. They walked slowly now, no rush in either of them. The puppy's steps were shorter, calmer, his earlier tension replaced by a quiet fatigue that settled deep into his bones. Adrenaline always left a mark. He felt it too, the heaviness behind his eyes, the tremor still lingering in his hands. Each breath came a little deeper than the last, as if his body was finally catching up to what had happened. You okay? He murmured, glancing down. The puppy looked up at him briefly, tongue peeking out, eyes soft. Then he kept walking. That was answer enough. They reached a bench farther down the trail, one he'd passed 100 times without ever stopping. Today he sat. The wood was cool beneath him, slightly damp from the morning air. The puppy curled at his feet almost immediately. A full circle. Nose tucked in. Tail wrapped close. Safe. He rested his elbows on his knees and stared out through the trees where the river curved out of sight. From here it looked peaceful again. Almost innocent. That unsettled him more than he expected. It doesn't look like anything happened, he whispered. The puppy's ear flicked at the sound of his voice, but he didn't lift his head. The memory replayed anyway. The sleeve in the water. The weight of the moment. The words, I've got a pulse. He swallowed, throat tight. They stayed like that for a while, letting the world move around them. A cyclist passed, nodding politely. A couple walked by with coffee cups in hand, laughing softly, unaware of how close this place had come to holding a very different ending. Life continued. That was the strange part. He reached down and rested his hand on the puppy's back. The fur rose and fell steadily beneath his palm, warm and solid. Grounding. Thank you, he said quietly. The puppy shifted slightly, pressing closer. He didn't know how long they sat there. Time felt softer now, stretched in a way that didn't demand attention. Eventually, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen. A missed call. Then a text from an unknown number. This is River County EMS. The individual you reported is stable and en route to the hospital. Your dog may have saved their life. His vision blurred. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing through the swell of emotion that rose unexpectedly fast. Stable. Alive. He looked down at the puppy again, something like a settling in his chest. You hear that? He whispered. You did that. The puppy lifted his head this time, blinking sleepily. He yawned, wide and slow, then rested his chin back on his paws. Humble. Unimpressed. He laughed softly, the sound shaky but real. Yeah, he murmured. That tracks. They walked home after that, the path familiar again, but layered now with something deeper. Every sound felt clearer. Every smell sharper. Even the light seemed warmer. At home, he filled the puppy's water bowl and watched him drink long and steady. Then came food, eaten with a calmer focus than usual. Afterward, the puppy padded into the living room and collapsed onto his favorite spot on the rug, sighing as his body finally let go. He joined him on the floor, back against the couch, legs stretched out. The house was quiet. Safe. You know, he said softly, staring at the ceiling. I almost didn't listen to you. The puppy's tail thumped once. A single gentle beat. I'm glad I did. The weight of that truth settled between them. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just real. Later, as the afternoon light shifted across the room, he felt something else begin to take hold. Gratitude. For being there at the right moment. For a dog who trusted his instincts. For listening when it mattered. He reached out and rested his hand on the puppy's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath his palm. Alive. Here. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls of the house, another heartbeat continued because of that moment by the river. The puppy sighed again in his sleep, and for the first time since morning, everything felt truly still. That evening, the house filled with the kind of quiet that only comes after something important has passed. Not silence. Rest. The light outside softened, slipping through the windows in long amber lines that stretched across the floor. Dust motes drifted lazily, catching the glow before settling again. The puppy slept on his side now, legs loose, chest rising and falling in a slow, steady rhythm. One ear was folded back, the other twitching occasionally, chasing dreams only he could see. He watched him for a long time. Longer than necessary. As if looking away might break something fragile. Earlier, he had replayed the morning over and over in his mind. Each moment clearer now. Each hesitation sharper. The way he almost pulled the leash and kept walking. The way the puppy hadn't let him. I won't forget that, he whispered. The puppy didn't stir. But somehow it felt heard. Later, after dinner dishes were put away and the house settled deeper into evening, his phone buzzed again. This time a voicemail notification. He hesitated before pressing play. Hi, a tired but steady voice said. This is the charge nurse from River County Hospital. I just wanted to let you know. The patient you found is awake. Disoriented but stable. They're expected to recover. He closed his eyes. A long breath left his chest slow and complete. Recover. The word carried weight. Warmth. Possibility. They asked us to thank whoever called it in, the nurse continued. So thank you. And thank your dog. The call ended. He sat there for a moment, phone resting loosely in his hand, letting the meaning of it sink in. Alive. Because a puppy had noticed a pebble that didn't belong. He looked down. The puppy had woken up. Not fully, just enough to blink at him, eyes glassy with sleep. His tail thumped twice against the rug. There you are, he said softly, smiling. The puppy stretched, slow and exaggerated, then rolled onto his back, paws in the air, completely unguarded. Trust. He leaned forward and rubbed his belly gently, fingers sinking into warm fur. You trusted me, he said quietly, even when I didn't understand. The puppy's leg kicked once in contentment. That night, when it was time for bed, the puppy followed him more closely than usual. He waited while the lights were turned off, while the door was locked, while the world outside faded into darkness. Then he climbed onto his dog bed and circled once, twice. He lay down facing the human this time, eyes half open, watchful even in rest. A guardian. He lay awake longer than usual, staring up at the ceiling, listening to the soft sounds of breathing in the room. Each inhale, each exhale. There were many ways the morning could have gone differently. He thought about that. About how often humans rushed past quiet warnings. How often they explained away instincts instead of listening to them. Dogs didn't do that. They noticed what changed, what shifted, what didn't belong. They paid attention. And sometimes they pulled us toward the truth before we were ready to see it. In the days that followed, life returned to its familiar rhythm. Work, errands, walks along the same river trail. But he noticed something new now. When the puppy slowed, he slowed too. When the puppy stopped, he stopped. No questions. No embarrassment. Just trust. The river still flowed calmly. The stones still lined the bank. Most mornings, there was nothing more than water and light and birdsong. But every time they passed that bend, he felt it, not fear but awareness. Quiet respect. One morning, weeks later, He noticed a small stone resting on the windowsill at home. The pebble. Clean now. Dry. Unremarkable. He didn't remember putting it there. Maybe he had. Maybe it had simply followed them home. He smiled at the thought. Some lessons didn't need reminders. They lived in the space between a hand and a leash, between a pause and a choice, between a human learning to listen, and a dog who already knew. He knelt beside the puppy, resting his forehead briefly against the warm curve of his neck. "You showed me," he whispered. "I won't forget." The puppy leaned into him solid and steady, tail giving a slow, contented wag. Outside, the river moved on. Inside, something permanent had settled. A bond strengthened by trust. A life saved by instinct. A truth revealed by a single misplaced pebble. And from that day forward, they walked the world a little more slowly, a little more carefully, together.